everyone, it's Miss Marilise here. I was just trimming up my paintbrush that I created out of things I found in nature so that I can paint with it. Would you guys like to know how to make one? All right, so while I finish painting here, I'll be putting some other videos up and you can look and see, first of all, what are the parts of a paintbrush so we know what to look for to make one, and then how to put it all together. Okay, I'll see you guys soon. I'm gonna use my paintbrush now. So before we can go and head out to find parts to make our own paintbrush, let's find out what a paintbrush is made out of, what parts of it. So let's look at this. Same size like this one. So what do you think this part right here is called? It's the part that you hold. It's called the handle. So that's the part that you hold to paint with. And remember that sweet spot where the handle touches the metal? What is that metal thing called? Let's look over here. The metal is called the ferrule. So it's a piece that holds the head or the bristles together with the handle, and it's usually made out of metal. Now, do you notice these two lines? See that? That's called the crimp. So a machine squeezes it and makes those two lines to make sure that it's nice and tight, secure, so it'll stay put and it won't fall apart. Now, you heard me call this a couple of things. The head, think of it as a body, that's the head, and also the bristles. So these are the bristles. And bristles are made from all different kinds of things. Way back a long time ago, paintbrushes, they used bristles out of reeds, out of feathers, and nowadays they use it out of different animal hairs or even synthetic. That means man-made materials. So this is synthetic. And you know, now with all our fancy computers, they have digital paintbrushes where you can use to paint right on the screen, and the paint is in the computer. It's not actual paint, but that's pretty cool, huh? All right, so let's talk about the head. So we have this part, that's the tip. Remember I talked about the ballerina tip? Dance on your tippy toes and don't stomp it and give it a bad hair day. Ah, no bad hair day, please. Okay, we have the tip, and that's the part that touches the paper. Then we have this wide part that's called the belly. That's where it holds all the paint so that when you're painting, it comes down and you can slide and paint around. And then at the bottom, so we have the tip, the belly, we have the heel, like the heel of a foot. Sometimes on paintbrushes, there's numbers, that's called the size. And the bigger the number, the wider and bigger the brushes. The smaller the number, the smaller the brushes. Then there's also the type. So here it says round. This is a round brush. Every brush has a different job depending on the type. So this one is round. Let's see over here. We have the round one. Then we have bright. See the different kinds of lines it makes? Flat, angled, script. Do you see how fine that line is? That's usually to do really fine details or even writing with. There's filbert. I love that name. Mop. And then one of my favorites, the fan. So now that we've learned the parts of a brush, now we can go out and try to find things in nature to create our own nature's brush. There's also a pretty fun video that shows how paintbrushes are created in the factory. All right, see you soon. Okay guys, are we ready to go outside and scavenger hunt for things to create our own paintbrush, our nature's paintbrush? I'm excited. So what we're gonna need is a basket to get all our findings. We need our detective eyes to look around and see if we can find things to create our paintbrush. Now remember the parts of the paintbrush that we need. So we need a stick, maybe like a branch or something that we can use for the handle of the paintbrush. And then we need to look for some things that we can turn into the bristles, the head of the paintbrush. So maybe some leaves, something like that. I'm not sure if we can find anything that we can use for the ferrule part of the paintbrush. We might have to use some string when we get back in class. So let's head outside and see what we can find. My detective eyes found some goodies over here. Look at this. This is on the side play yard. So here's a twig that fell. That could be used for the handle, maybe. There's some leaves with the stem, and we can use a leaf part for the brush, Or if we find a bunch of leaves, and I see a bunch around, we can also use the stem part to make the bristles. So lots of options. I'm gonna stick these in my bucket and see what else I can find. So I went outside and looked in the garden to see if I can find anything. And we do want to be careful and ask our teachers before we touch to make sure it's safe. But I found a few things, and some things that I thought would be sticks would be harder are actually softer. So I might end up using those for the bristles of the brush. But here I have a bunch of pine needles. And if you look over here, we have a big pine tree right over here. Oh, look, there are those jack-o'-lanterns that we did with Miss Ivy. So over here, if you look down, there's a bunch of pine needles that we can use. Those would make great parts of the bristle for our paintbrush. I'm gonna keep looking. Look at this plant that I found right in front of the MP building. I forget what it's called, but you know what? The tip of it kind of reminds me of the bristles of a paintbrush. And if you touch it, it's actually pretty soft. I wonder if we could use some of those. We have to ask permission first. Look at this. I found this right there in front of the MP building. And you know what that is? That's a baby little pine tree. So we don't want that to grow up here because it would be too big. So this is something that, again, you have to ask your teachers, you'd be able to pull out. So we're gonna go ahead and do that. That would make a perfect bristle. So my detective eyes found lots of goodies when I was outside. I went on the side yard, I went in the garden, I went outside. And so while you guys are outside, keep an eye out for different things that you can use to make your paintbrush. So for the handle part of the paintbrush, I needed something sturdy and strong. And I was looking and I found these pieces over here. And from far away, they look like they would work. They look kind of strong and sturdy, but then I touched them and they bent. So you think that would work as a handle? Probably not, but you know what? We could use it as part of the bristle for the paintbrush. Now these sticks right here are perfect for our handle. Now, do we want one this long? I mean, there are some artists that use long paintbrushes, but for what we're gonna use, what we're gonna paint with, we really don't need a long handle like this. So your teacher can help you to break it into a smaller piece. Did you hear that snap? So this is, look at that, that's a perfect handle. It's almost the same size and it's nice and sturdy. So I have my handle. Now I need to figure out what I can use for the bristles, for the head of the paintbrush. So there's all these different things that I found. Remember I was pointing you about the little baby pine tree that was growing? And so I pulled it out. Now remember, before you guys pull anything out, make sure to ask your teacher if it's okay, because we don't want to pull anything out that we're working hard to plant into the garden. And we also want to make sure that whatever we touch is safe. So these pine trees, I know are okay to pull because we really don't want them growing so close to our building. And these little bristles right here are gonna be perfect for the paintbrush. And look, there's even the root. So you could use that for the paintbrush. You see how it's kind of crumbling though? So I don't know if that would work or not, but this would definitely be great. So I'm gonna add that to my bristle pile. This was another weed that I found and that I happened to pull out. Now again, you want to make sure that it's okay to pull it. Really want to look for things that have already been found, because the other thing is if we pull it out fresh, it won't last long. See how it's already kind of floppy? But I kind of like the texture of it, so I'm going to add that to my pile. Remember I talked about the pine straw from the pine trees? There is a bunch of pine straws around falling down from the pine trees. So a bunch of these put together would make great bristles. So I'm gonna add that to my pile. So I've got a bunch already. I was pointing out to these and I said how soft they look, and they are pretty soft. Now these will kind of crumble and land on your paper, but this is a nature's paintbrush, so it's okay if we get some of the parts of our paintbrush on our painting, right? So I might use this. Let's see, what else do we have? I found this long blade of grass So this is a little sturdy. You could use that as part of your handle. This is even stronger here. Now, what about these leaves? We can sort them by different size. Look how big this one is. It's as big as my hand. Now, what about this one? That one's a lot smaller. So we could use this brush, and we could also use, I call it a brush. We could use this leaf as part of our paintbrush. And then we can add this one too. I can fold this one in half and wrap it around to make a paintbrush. So there's lots of different options. Now, look at this beautiful maple leaf. Isn't that pretty? So we can actually use this part, the stem, for the bristles, or we can use this part. We can use both. So many options. But I also ran into these leaves right here. Do you think these would work for a paintbrush? Uh-oh. Do you hear that sound? What's happening? These are a little bit too dry, so they're crumbling. So do you think this would make a good part of our bristle of a paintbrush? You think we could use this? No, probably not. It would end up falling apart and it wouldn't hold our paint and it would just crumble away. So we want to find leaves that have just freshly fallen, that are still kind of soft but not dry and crumbly. And again, there's so many different kinds of leaves. So to put it together, we are going to need the ferrule. So remember, there's the handle, there's the bristles, and then there's this part, the ferrule. And in that video that showed how to make the paintbrushes, the bristles go inside that ferrule and it closes and then it's crimped. Well, we don't have all that. So what could we use? We have some foil. So once we have our stem, our handle, and some of our bristles, and again, we can cut it afterwards. I'm gonna use some leaves too. I want some pine straw too. So we could wrap it around like that, really tight. And then we can have our ferrule, but we would still need to make it super tight, either with a pipe cleaner and wrap it around tight. So that's an option. Or what else could we use? Could we use some string? And what about if we don't have foil? We don't have to use the foil. I think it's easy because it kind of keeps it all together and then it helps us control the handle better as we wrap it tight. So look at that, I'm wrapping it really, 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 really tight. And then with the help of your teacher, we can knot it. Look at that, that's already working. Or we could use tape. So there's lots of different ways that you can make your nature's paintbrush. This is just one of many. And again, you guys are going to find all kinds of different things. So you may not find or use the same things that I use, and that's okay. So long as we have the 3 parts of the paintbrush, you will have created your own nature's paintbrush, and then you'll be ready to create your masterpiece. So, did you learn a lot about paintbrushes? How they're made? Did you go find some really cool things out in nature to make your own? Well, now that you have it all put together, you can create your own artwork. I love the texture of mine using the different leaves and pine straws. So I can't wait to see how you paint with yours. See you later.